Here's how this works. We take one 3-time world champion, one 4-time world champion, and find out who's better, based entirely on the best shots they played during their careers. Yes, it doesn't make the greatest amount of sense, and no, we don't include shots that are technically flukes, but in a way, you will find out who's better. We are comparing 6 of the greatest shots from each player to decide how difficult they were to play, and that tells you more than you might think. To find out exactly how difficult, I'm going to be attempting these shots myself, starting off with some of their most ambitious shots. And we're beginning with Mark Williams at the World Championships, who pots the red he needs to win the frame off the black to leave his opponent needing snookers. To play this shot, you need to stun the red into the correct part of the black, and although you need to be incredibly accurate, you've got a little bit more room for error than you might think here. And this is quite a clever shot because the cue ball's going safe and there's a good chance you could be knocking the black out of commission as well. I was pretty happy to get it this quickly. Our shot from John Higgins also comes from the World Championships, where he was trying to make a maximum break against Judd Trump and doubles the last red in the final. After a few goes at this shot, I realised it was going to be a lot harder than I initially thought. Not only do you have to get the double, which is quite tough, but you have to stun the cue ball behind the black with a tracer right hand side to spin it out in position. I also got this in 4 attempts and it was similarly difficult, so who wins this one? Two good shots, and John's double looks to be the more significant of the two, but unfortunately he missed the next black. Mark's shot was for the match, so I don't really know which way to call this one, so I'm calling it as a draw. Next up, we've got 2 crucial match-winning shots against each other. We start this time with John Higgins in the 2010 UK Championships, needing this brown to leave Mark needing snookers and win the match by 10 frames to 9. This was by no means a rash shot. He was stunning the cue ball to the baulk cushion and playing the shot at a pace that the brown was never going to come back down the other end of the table. The pink's also fairly safe and there was a good chance of him getting the snooker behind the blue if he missed. As I discovered afterwards, I was playing this a little bit too slowly because if I rattled it in the jaws, it was never going to go safe, and that's why John played it a little bit harder than I did. Against that, we got this shot from Mark Williams. This isn't to win the UK Championships, this is to win the World Championships and put the result beyond any doubt. This one isn't played with a lot of power or a lot of spin. You don't really have to do anything with it, but the fact that it's tight under the baulk cushion makes it incredibly difficult to roll the cue ball the length of the table like this. You might even describe this as a typical Mark Williams shot because we've seen this countless times from him throughout his career. This time, John's double on the brown clearly gets him over the line. Not only is it a better shot, but it also is the shot that leaves Mark needing snookers. Time now for some skillful pack splits. And this is one from Mark Williams that caught everybody's eye when they first saw it, screwing the cue ball into the baulk cushion and getting it to spin back perfectly into the pack of reds. I was really worried at the start I wasn't going to be able to get this, but as it turns out, if you put maximum backspin and left-hand side and play this at a firm pace, the cue ball arcs naturally into the reds. Up against that, we got this shot from John Higgins at the Players' Championships, where he plays the cue ball perfectly between the yellow and brown, splitting the reds and giving himself a good chance. Getting exactly the right amount of stun and left-hand side on the cue ball here is incredibly challenging, and I was a little bit fortunate to end up on the red the way I did. Weirdly, John's shot might even be a little bit harder to play, but Mark's looks far better, so we're going to stick with that as the winner.
Next up, we've got some of the best pressure shots.
We've got to go all the way back to the 2006 Masters final for this one, and another final frame decider for John Higgins, this time against Ronnie O'Sullivan. 60 points behind in the deciding frame, this red just about makes it to the pocket, and John ends up making the clearance with an impressive double halfway through. Although this wasn't one of the most difficult shots he'd ever played, it was one of the most significant. Our next shot from Mark Williams you wouldn't really think of as a pressure shot, but had he have missed this in the semi-finals of the World Championships against Barry Hawkins, he could have lost the frame and gone 14-11 behind. From that position it would have been very unlikely that he won the match, so his third world title depended entirely on him getting this right. And that's not exactly easy, because it was this shot that was decided to be the shot of the World Championships for 2018. What you're trying to do with this one is stun the cue ball into the safest position possible while still leaving yourself a shot on the black, and even if the red makes contact with the red over the pocket, it's not guaranteed to go in.
Even though John desperately needed to pot his shot, it wasn't anywhere near as difficult, so Mark clearly wins this one. But before the next one, we're just going to find Hadi from Kahoy, Iran, which is roughly there. For our next shots, it's all about snookers.
And Mark Williams' shot seems him not only escaping from a snooker and getting the cue ball to go back down the table, but potting the red at the same time. And for some reason, he was playing these shots one-handed at the time.
I'm not sure why he was playing these shots one-handed, but it's not exactly going to make it any easier, is it?
So I'm obviously playing this shot one-handed, but I'm also putting a lot of left-hand side on the cue ball. This allows it to spin round two cushions off the top cushion and side cushion and come back safe to bulk. Standing up like this does make it a tiny bit easier to see where the cue ball needs to go, but if I was down on the shot I'd have a lot more control on it. I can't really judge properly how much left-hand side I'm putting on the cue ball here, which was making it difficult. Playing it like this, it was probably the hardest shot to get right so far, and I did think at one point I was never going to get it, but fortunately the red went in and the cue ball went roughly exactly where it should have gone. Now to John Higgins needing a snooker against Marco Fu, with only the pink and black left and the black tight against the cushion. Not only does John manage to get this, but he managed to get the cue ball right in behind the black here. This one needs to be played with a lot of right hand side to make the angle around two cushions, and my first attempt was a good guide, although I didn't quite hit it hard enough. On my second attempt, I discovered if you play the pink twice across the table and put a lot of right-hand side on the cue ball, then it almost naturally tracks towards the pocket near where the black was. Obviously, I didn't want it to go in the pocket, but I quickly discovered no matter what I did, this is where the cue ball seemed to want to go. It didn't matter how thick or thin I hit the pink, the cue ball would end up going in the same direction, and I needed it to go a little bit thicker and come down onto the top cushion and drop in behind the black. I couldn't believe how many times I went in off here, and even when I wasn't going in off, the cue ball was heading in that direction. I then decided to reduce the amount of side spin I put on the cue ball, and this quickly started to work, and eventually I managed to just about get the cue ball in behind the black. So who won this one?
Even though Mark's one-handed snooker escape was good, this one definitely goes to John Higgins' snooker against Marco Fu. We're just going to quickly find Tim, who's from Delft in the Netherlands, which is there. Not sure what these last two shots have in common, so let's just call them some other impressive shots.
In a dominant performance at the Players' Championship, John completely demolishes the competition, and this shot where he plays the cue ball perfectly round the table for the red on the top cushion just shows why. To play this shot, you need to strike the cue ball with topspin and left-hand side. The spin makes the cue ball arc around the red above the black slightly. From there, it's just about getting the pace right. I was really happy to get this on my first attempt. Next we have Mark Williams escaping from a snooker. He puts an unbelievable amount of side spin on the cue ball here to flick off a red and get back safe. To play this shot you're going to need to put a hell of a lot of left hand side on the cue ball, and I didn't realise with my first attempt just how much. On my second attempt I managed to get through the cue ball a lot better and make contact with the reds and get the cue ball fairly safe. But which one of these two shots is going to win the contest overall?
They were both good in their own way, but I think John's shot was a little bit better.
I always considered John to be the slightly better player over the last 30 years, and this is backed up by the statistics and by his results. But I really didn't expect him to win this contest because this is all about the sort of shots we usually associate with Mark Williams. But of course these are just examples of the best shots I could find from each player, and I'm sure if we put these shots into a different order we'd come out with a slightly different result. But maybe we associate these shots with Mark Williams a little bit more because he hasn't quite won as much as we would have expected him to. Or maybe I just didn't allow for the fact that John Higgins being at the top of the game for the last 25 years was obviously going to result in him playing some of the best shots. Either way, the careers of both of these players are far from over, and if we review this again in 5 years' time, we could come out with a completely different result. If you want to find out what happened when I did something similar to this with Stephen Hendry and Ronnie O'Sullivan, have a look at this video. And remember, don't just watch, play, and make the commitment to becoming a better player by subscribing to the channel and visit the website. See you later.